All right. I just want to ask now, as we get started, showing BK on the Chiefs, the best without question, no competitors, Chiefs podcast in all of the world. Serda, you think BK is still excited about watching Patrick Mahomes play without Travis Kelsey? Is that what you were thinking the entire way? Oh yeah, you thought we was gonna dance away from that. Oh,
Well,
you thought I had forgot, didn't you? No, I'm just curious. I want to come back. You got to watch it. I want to know at what point of that damn game on Thursday night last week in which you had said, you know what? You know what? I'm not actually excited about watching Travis Kelsey not play with Patrick Mahomes. I'm just curious, Big A, because you were like, what were you saying? Oh, I'm excited. I love it. I love it. I want to see it. Oh, you gave this comparison, this stupid comparison. You said, oh, you remember in the finals when LeBron played against the Warriors? Kyrie got injured and Kevin Love threw his shoulder out against the Celtics, and he had to play with nobodies out there, and he had to play with those guys. And we saw him, he scored 44 points a game, and he had all those assists. And Andre Iguodala, who was guarding him, won the MVP. Did you enjoy that? He had them up. He had them up 3 games to 2. No, I didn't enjoy that. No, I did not.
The result was the same. They both lost.
I didn't. And so I'm just curious. You still enjoying games with Patrick Mahomes without Travis Kelsey? I'm just wondering.
I would say it was like the second horrific Kadarius Toney drop where I realized I'm not enjoying this as much as I was hoping to. Yeah. That was not fun. I didn't enjoy that a whole lot. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Didn't enjoy that. Didn't look good. It was one of the worst games statistically of Patrick Mahomes' career. He never has bad games. Even in that one, statistically, he was okay, but he averaged 5.8 yards per attempt. Yeah, not fun, Ron. Not fun at all. And one of the main reasons why is because we learned stuff about the Chiefs, specifically their wide receiver core. And my hope was that we wouldn't learn a whole lot. My hope was that we would learn, if anything, positive signs. And
no, ain't do that,
dude. That did not happen.
No, yeah, I was never on that ridiculous boat of who, and Serda generally.
By the way, this is deserved. I deserve everything that you just threw my way. It's 100% deserved.
Usually the first thing that rolls out of Serda's mouth when BK says something, I agree with BK. He did not do it on that one. I remember distinctly. Serda did not say no. I mean, I'm not excited watching him.
I see where the thought process went because Mahomes always does this. He always pulls it out of his bag. We've just never seen it done without Travis Kelsey before. But I mean, Kelsey should be back this week. I hope so. Hopefully, we don't ever have to see it again, and we don't ever have to talk about what happens if Travis Kelsey's not there for Patrick Mahomes ever again.
It's a damn shame how hard I was watching him go through stretch routines and how hard I'm trying to squint and watch and see if I see anything where he ran through just jogging routes. It's crazy as hell. But not only is Travis Kelsey expected to be back, Chris Jones has ended his holdout, which many people are like, well, that was a useless holdout. You've lost money, and now you've added the incentives to try to. So you lost money. You left what we've heard numbers on a contract on the table. You've lost money due to your holdout, and now the money you can earn is based upon your play and incentives and not even guaranteed. So he is back with the Chiefs. He will play in this game. Not sure as much, but he is back with the Chiefs finally. He spoke with the media, did all these things. As we sit here, BK, your thoughts now that the Chris Jones saga is finally over. He is back with the Chiefs. He did miss a game. Your thoughts?
All right. So let's start with this. There's no winners here, only losers. And specifically, the biggest loser is
I agree with that.
Chris Jones and the Chiefs are not going to be in a long-term relationship. And that means that fans lose because Chris Jones is one of the best players in the NFL. And watching him week to week play for your team is really cool. It's kind of like having Tyreek Hill, right? Last week, as I was watching on Sunday, Ron, and you watched the Miami Dolphins and you saw the amazing ways that Mike McDaniel's able to get him the football. I would have been really cool to have on the Chiefs. Now, that one was more complicated than this one with Chris Jones is and has been. However, Jones not being here long-term is going to suck. It really is. But I think that's where we're at. Because when you have a situation like this, and now all of the numbers have gotten out, apparently the Chiefs offered a 2-year deal worth about $27 million guaranteed fully. I don't know that I would have accepted that if I'm Chris Jones, to be totally honest with you.
No, especially with Nick Bosa's coming and rolling in with. Oh, yeah. No.
I wouldn't have done it either. I would not have held out. I wouldn't have held out as long as he did, but I would not have accepted that deal either. I think the big thing here that some people are missing is that there is still that franchise tag that's available. And if the Chiefs were willing to offer him $27 million guaranteed to each of the next 2 years, they're fully prepared to take on that big cap hit next year. So they can still do that. And I think people are just kind of writing off the idea that he's going to be back next year or that he'll be traded on the tag next year. I think those two are the most likely scenarios moving forward. But I do not think he's going to be here long term, Ron. And I would also add this. I think that the Chiefs deserve a lot of credit for the creativity that they got in terms of getting him back on this roster and making it work cap-wise. But that's a bunch of funky number stuff that we don't have to get into. The big takeaway here, Jones is not likely to be here long-term.
Serda, see, he said that not to be here long-term. Is there, because this is my thinking as well, is like, I think that's the lean, right? He's not going to be here long-term. But Serda, is there any type of season that Chris Jones can have? Is there anything that can happen to where at the end of the season they can come to the table and like, all right, like we got to work this thing long term? Because that's the only like saving grace is like if Chris Jones goes off and is a top 2 defensive player in the year candidate or wins the thing, that wouldn't potentially push the Chiefs to maybe step up their offer.
I don't think so.
I don't either.
I think everything that we saw this offseason and this training camp, I think that says everything that we need to know about this thing moving forward and the future. And the Chiefs are generally pretty good at planning ahead and looking at a couple years down the line and saying, what do we need to do here to make sure there isn't a dramatic drop off if we got to let this guy go? And I don't think that they were having those thoughts about Chris Jones, but they 100% are now. Like, I think this offseason was really about, let's get this long-term deal done with him. Let's lock him in for a few more years, and then we're good for a while. And we'll address it when we need to address it down the line. And I don't see how that is the case anymore. Like, I do, despite what Chris Jones said earlier this week, like, I do think that there was some relationships affected a little bit by this whole thing. And, let's say he hits all of his incentives this season, and one of his incentives is win Defensive Player of the Year and a Super Bowl. So if he hits all of his incentives, incredible season. But we already went through this with Jones, where he was looking to get paid for what he had done in the past. And the Chiefs were saying, we're cautious about that because what if that's the best you're ever going to be? Well, if he does all of that this season, this is certainly the best he's probably ever going to be. So if they wouldn't pay it this season, I don't think they're going to pay it next season when he's a year older. And it wouldn't really make sense to do that, but it would also be really weird to trade a player who wins Defensive Player of the Year if that happens this season. So he's got to play his ass off. He's got to earn all of his money this season, and he kind of put himself in that situation. I just don't think that, despite what they say, that this thing actually, everyone came out of this thing unscathed. Like, I think there's some people who are annoyed on both sides with how all of this stuff unfolded.
Absolutely. And I'll just say this is, to that point, they usually do prepare. It's hard to prepare to replace him and to start that right now. Like, it's hard to prepare. Like, there have been times where they've been preparing to do things. Like, Tyreek Hill is the other example of a great player that they bounced on. I guess Tyrann Mathieu, to another extent, is a great player, but you could see where they could fill the void for that. But with Tyreek Hill, though, man, you just have to be clear that you're living in a place where Travis, Mahomes, and Reed are all on that side of the ball to figure out a different way. And the thing we know about Andy is Andy has changed it to where he can have an offense where T.O. is the focal point in Donovan McNabb. He can have an offense where Brian Westbrook is the focal point in Donovan McNabb. He can have an offense where Alex Smith and use his strengths. He can have an offense where Jamal Charles is. He can morph into whatever he needs to and still have great offenses. Right now, what we learned in week 1 is, this offense might take a bit to get here, right? And we know Travis is getting older. This offense might take a bit to where you need the defense to be stronger. And I'm telling you right now, there's not enough time to be prepared right now to go get a replacement level player for Chris Jones and everything that you need him to be at this point. We'll see what happens if they're able to trade him or whatever. But I'm just saying it's going to take more than a year. It's going to take more than some time to me to be able to get the replacement type level, or if that's in one player or multiple players, to fix a void that Chris Jones leaves.
I don't know that I agree with that, actually. In terms of the offensive side of what you were saying there, of like, it's going to take some time for the offense to get back to what it was.
I'm saying what we learned in week 1 is it's not just a Chris gone, but we can lean on Patrick Mahomes and this group to just do whatever they need to do to kind of counteract what you would lose from Chris Jones. I'm just saying it may take a little bit more time for this offense to get to that level to where, hey, man, if we got to score 30, we'll score 30. If we got to score 35, we'll score 35. Might take a little bit.
If they don't have Travis Kelce, I agree with you. But they're going to have Travis Kelce. And so, like, that's where I think I'm going to push back a little bit is I think the offense is going to be fine so long as Kelce is out there. If he ends up not being healthy and this week he's at like 50% but takes the field, then I totally think that you're in the right here. I think that if I learned anything in week 1, though, it's that this defense is better than we gave it credit for. I mean, they went up against a team that all of us agree, top 10 offense in the NFL, right? I think some of their weapons get a little overstated. Like, the Detroit Lions need a number 2 wide receiver. Clearly. They don't have that guy. But it's a good offense. And the Chiefs defense, sans Chris Jones, held them to 14 points defensively. So I think that week 1 was actually not a great sign for Chris Jones. And I think that's part of why he's back with the team right now, is he saw, okay, like, maybe me staying out is not actually going to be a great thing for me to show the value that I have to this defense. I love Chris Jones. You guys know, I think they should pay him. I think they should just get it done, get him the $28 million a year on a 3-year deal, 4-year deal, and say, let's get on with this thing. But I don't think week 1 necessarily helped his case in that regard. I thought week 1 was really a sign of how valuable Travis Kelce is to this team, more so than it was anything else.
Yeah, I'm not going to read that much into one performance from the Chiefs defense. I think they did put together a really strong performance without him, and they played really well. But I think there's a lot of stuff to that. Like, I think they are fired up to prove something, and maybe it didn't even help the cause that they probably found out ahead of the game Chris Jones was hanging out in a suite watching the football game. So maybe some of the players were like, we got to prove that we can do this without him. And I just don't buy that you're going to be able to do that on a week-to-week basis in the NFL when you don't have game wreckers like Chris Jones.
But they also might be able to replace him. Like, not one for one, but it's $30 million that's coming off of the cap, and we're acting as if it's you just pull Chris Jones out of the lineup and cannot go out there and use that money elsewhere. You probably get a first-round, second-round pick for him and $30 million in cap space. And that is what we're talking about flexibility-wise that opens up. I'm not telling you the Chiefs are right in just allowing him to walk, but that's the case against it. And I feel like sometimes it doesn't even get stated.
I hear you. I just don't know how many guys are letting or having dominant defensive front 7 guys.
Yeah, but
be available.
Okay, but you can, distributing the resources and finding values that come in and work for you. Like, there's lots of teams that do that highly effectively and wind up with good defenses and good pass rushers because of it. I'm just saying, key moment, AFC Championship game, you need somebody who you know can go out and do it. Like, that means something to me, and I think that matters. And those guys just don't grow on trees. Like, I know Chris Jones is a second-round pick that outperformed his draft status, but generally we see these guys go in the top 10 of the draft. And like, the Eagles just got one in Jalen Carter, who looks like he is going to be an absolute monster. but it took some draft day trade wizardry from Howie Roseman. Like, if the Chiefs could do that, that'd be great. But I think the relationship between Howie Roseman and the way that he works these deals with the rest of the NFL doesn't seem to be there for Brett Veach, because it seems like most of the rest of the league right now is just like, why would we help you? You win all the time. Get out of here.
But even if they got their hands on a Jalen Carter, the number one inside presence and defensive player out there, how long do you think Jalen Carter will be anywhere close to the level of what Chris Jones is?
Like, how long do I think it'll take?
Like, how long does that take? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it took Chris Jones a couple years.
I was going to say, how long did it take for us to, like, Chris Jones, like that 1 year where he had 15 sacks? That was 2 or 3 years into his career. Like, we saw some flashes. That's all I'm saying is, I am of the belief that this thing ain't going past this year. This is the last dance for the Chiefs and Chris Jones. I don't think it's going past this year. But in this case, this is a time where they don't have a young guy in the middle already here that they've used with a second round pick or something, or a first round pick where they've prepared for this thing. They're going to probably add numbers in the draft next year, and they'll get that guy here, or they'll find somebody in free agency or try with the trade, but you just don't get those guys like guys that are impact guys. People aren't really trading.
I think what it'll have to be, instead of being just a 1-for-1, like, you're not getting a defensive tackle that is a Chris Jones, and this is a conversation for certainly later on, but it's probably more likely that they end up getting like a cornerback or a wide receiver or something to make up that value at a very different position in a very different way compared to what they had with Chris Jones.
And it's worth thinking about, like, in that situation, like, if you can go out and find guys like Mike Dana, Charles Amena, who can rotate in and out, and we just see them try to do a lot more of that moving forward.
Yay.
And they're not blue chippers. Like, that's the other thing. You made a really good point, Serda. In the biggest games that you have, you need a dude that can go make a play for you. Yeah, and Chris Jones is going to go make that play for you. And whoever they go get to replace him probably will not be capable of making that same play in that same spot.
They're going to need Spags to scheme it up. And I don't love that. I don't love that. But
at least we got one more year.
I will say, with that, the one more year thing, the one thing that I do have concern about, and we got to spend a lot of time on it, but this is the thing that I do have concern with, and I said this a few weeks ago, is, like, my thought was, I think everybody in the locker room is good. I think everybody on the coaching staff is good until little buddies start missing games. And Chris Jones missed a game, and they're no fools. I know what BK said, and I know in what ways you can look at the stats and say, hey, man, they gave up 14 points. Kadarius Toney didn't drop the ball into Brian Branch's hands. You know, they win the game. And true, but we know the game goes in different ways. But there are multiple times out there where you're like, damn, wish 9-5 was in there for that pass rush. The long where they extended the drive where he had to get cute and had to blitz L'Jarius Sneed off the edge, and he just missed getting a sack on Jared Goff. There was no pressure for him on the in the middle of the line. He could step up into that throw. What does that look like if 95 is out there? How different do they have to swing their protection? And maybe there is nothing over there for L'Jarius Sneed to get through, and he's got an easier like there were times. And then at the end, I know many people talk about Chris Jones' inconsistency in the run defense, but I damn sure know everybody that's a Chiefs fan would rather him be out there than who they was putting out there when they desperately needed to stop the run, because when he wants to stop the run, he can go and be dominant and just get through people. So there were plenty of moments. There were 2 drives where they just ran it up the middle, down their throats, where 95, I think, makes a play, or at least makes them think about doing something different. And that one, there's a couple of pass plays on third downs where Jared Goff is able to extend drives because he's able to get throws off that I wonder that if Chris Jones could make those plays. But I think people see that and they're like, damn, man, you wasn't there for us. I think there's some people in that locker room that are at least the lingering feeling. I don't think everybody's like, hey, man, hey, dog, man, I know, man. Hey, it's busy. You try to get that money. Now, there's some people thinking like, well, hold on, dog. You missed the first game of the year. You made your way out there in the suite, sitting next to those two mobsters-looking dudes, and you sitting up there, nothing changed. You ain't getting really no new money.
Have brought them. I don't know why he brought his agents.
Nah, man. Yeah, he got.
That was their idea.
That was them. They had to get theirs, but you ain't getting no new money, and you come back the next week. So, like, how come this stuff couldn't have been done a week prior or 2 weeks prior? So you ain't missing games. I wonder, is there a lingering effect that may last past this about Chris Jones actually missing games? Because I'm missing a game. I wonder if that is an issue in that locker room, because it's hard for me to believe that when you're looking at 53 to 60 guys, when you count the practice squad, that everybody's like, hey, we get it. We good. Yeah, man, we didn't have our best defensive player out there. And many a times we could have used your ass against the Lions. Hey, we good though. I don't know.
Have any of the Chiefs rookies even met Chris Jones prior to this week?
I'm about to say, that's real. And and it's their first round pick on the defensive line. Hey, probably ain't met him until this week.
He's got a guy at his position that's probably never met him in Keandre Coburn. I think you'd be totally right, Ron, in terms of like this being a big issue if it was longer. Like if this was the 8 weeks that he was talking about, I think there would be some serious issues inside of that locker room when he returned. It was only 1 week. Chiefs, I think most of the players in that locker room know they should have won that game if not for dropped passes. And the defense allowed 14 points basically to the Detroit Lions. So I do think that what you said is true. Like they had 2 drives of 9 or more plays, one of 9 plays, another of 14. If you're telling me you don't think Chris Jones makes one negative play on one of those 2 drives, you're crazy. I absolutely believe that he would have been able to do something like that. And that kills drives when you get those negative plays. And maybe they don't score there. Maybe the Chiefs win as a result. But it's one game. They ended up allowing 14 points defensively. I would imagine most of that locker room probably is like, you know what? Hey, fine. It was one game. We'll be all right here. So I don't think it's going to be a lingering problem, but if I were to like, you travel forward in time and then you look back and say, hey, how did we get here? Why are the Chiefs 9-8 at the end of the season? One of the reasons that you could convince yourself would have led to that would be the Chris Jones situation, would be the Travis Kelce injury, would be the wide receivers not picking up the slack, would be the offensive line not being what it was in the running game a year ago. Like some of these things that we saw in week 1, you could see how they could portend problems down the road.
Yeah, I just don't think like Kelsey's out here begging on a damn podcast that everybody's running on TV. Like, hey, Chris, we need you. And he missing this game. Nick Bolton, man, you come right in there. Hey, dog, we good, baby. Good. Missed that game. Show could have used your ass out there. So I don't know. I hope it's not a thing. That's one to watch because he actually did miss a game, and I wonder how they deal with that. All right, we do this every week when the Chiefs have the ball. And I want to listen. This is what I want to say. And I want to go here. And I haven't heard many people say this. All right. And I've not heard a lot of people talk about this. And listen, I understand Chiefs fans don't want to go here. As you just said, Chiefs lost this game because of drops. And I think that is a very, very fair statement. There was a ball that was hit right in the hands of Kadarius Toney. And no, it didn't just drop. No, he didn't just drop it. No, he didn't just drop it into the hands of Brian Branch for an interception. No, he dropped it to the hands for Brian Branch for an untouched interception return for a touchdown. They lost the game by 1 point. So, yes, there was a lot there with that. Kadarius Toney was bad. Sky Moore didn't seem to be really good at getting a lot of separation. Justin Ross, God bless him, doing the best he can. Rashid Rice had some moments. Like, it just, from the passing game perspective, they struggled and the receivers were bad. But you know who else wasn't great? Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes wasn't great, and I need to see the great one on Sunday in Jacksonville. I expect to see the great one on Sunday in Jacksonville. I'll be honest with you. I was extremely disappointed in Patrick Mahomes. Extremely disappointed in Patrick Mahomes in the game Thursday against the Lions. And I'm not saying he was the number one reason that they lost, but I will say this. To the point, we laughed and joked of why you said you're excited to see Kelce out. Because you wanted to see, all right, Mahomes raise this level. We've seen him do everything. And for me, I look at this moment, what do we need from Patrick Mahomes against the Lions with no Kelce, with no Chris Jones? Hey, man, we need you to be great. Not every game, but when we get those guys back, it's cool. But tonight, we need you to be great. Tonight, we need you to step up and do that. He wasn't great. He was just cool. Like, we can be honest about it. Kadarius Toney's got to catch that pass as an NFL player, the last one. But that ball was behind him. And there was no pressure on him. He was rolled out. Patrick Mahomes, with his eyes closed, I expect to hit that and hit him in stride and not to make him reach around. Before that, hey, man, that play, that drive in which he was playing dodgeball with Richie James and Kadarius Toney, like, one, hey, man, you can see that. Won't you let Richie pass through a little bit before you just fire it in there? Now, maybe that's some of the timing and things too, but right, that ain't all on Kadarius Toney. If Kadarius Toney caught that would have been a hell of a catch for him to catch. But you saw Richie James right there. You just threw it at his ass, right? And what happened on the play before that? It was 2nd down and 2 on that play before that. Sky Moore was wide open on an RPO, and he threw it woefully behind him, right? That's what led up to that. He missed Justin Watson in the middle of the field short. He down the field, the throws, the timing was off. Like, Mahomes is the greatest player in the planet, and I think that Tom Brady is the GOAT for now. That's what I've said. Tom Brady is the GOAT FN for now until Mahomes finishes this thing out, and I think he will catch him. I needed to see that. Like, you didn't have your dude. I needed to see you go and be great, not just be cool, not just be all right. He missed guys in a way. Like, his completion percentage was awful. There were some drops in there, but he was off. And he was off at times down the field, and he helped with some of those drops. So, the first thing I want to see week 2 against Jacksonville, I want to see the great one come out on Sunday because they needed him to be great. Now, maybe they don't necessarily need to be great Sunday, but I want to see it. They needed him to be great against the Lions with everything that was missing, and he was just cool. Now, a lot of people don't want to admit that and say that, but that was the truth out there.
I think a lot of what you're saying there is completely accurate. I would also add this. I think Patrick Mahomes is kind of entering that Aaron Rodgers part of his career. And what I mean by that is people used to give Rodgers, myself included, a lot of grief for the way that he wouldn't throw to the young guys, right? It would take forever for the young guys to get implemented into the offense because he didn't like the way they ran routes. They weren't in the right spot at the right time. Like, things just got a little discombobulated. So instead, they would play the guys that he liked. They would put Randall Cobb into the offense. He would throw to Devontae Adams all day long because he knew exactly what to expect from those guys. And I think that's some of what you saw on Thursday night. Mahomes didn't know where to expect Rashee Rice to be. He didn't think that Kadarius Toney was in the right spot at the right time. Sky Moore very clearly was not in the right spot at the right time on some of those passes. And I think that's what led to, because like my initial reaction, Ron, was this. I'm disappointed that Patrick Mahomes didn't make it work with Sky. Because when you watch some of it, when you watch it, Sky's open on a lot of his routes. Sky has a gift of finding a way to get open. And he just didn't get targeted, really. He does. He's really good at finding a way to create separation. And Mahomes just doesn't target him. And I think part of the reason why, and this is what I'm learning about Sky as we go along here, is that he's not doing it within the offense. And in this offense with this quarterback and this coach, that ain't going to play, dude. you're not going to be able to stay on the field as often if you continue doing the things that he did on Thursday night. So I am frustrated with the way that Patrick Mahomes played in that game, but he did help with his legs. And I think the wide receivers really put him into a bad spot, both with the drops and also with where they were at. I don't think that they were in the spots that they were supposed to. I don't think they made the side adjustments that they were supposed to. And if that stuff happens, it's kind of hard to blame Mahomes. I think that's more of a wide receiver issue.
Yeah.
Mahomes was inaccurate. Like, there was tons of passes, it felt like, on Thursday.
There are passes. I get what you're saying.
I
get what you're saying, but there are passes you got, like, I expect him to hit.
But some of that could also be because he's throwing to a spot and they're not getting to that right spot. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can look like it's an inaccurate pass, but instead of breaking it off at 6 yards, maybe they broke it off at 5. And that's going to make it look like it's thrown behind him because the timing's off on the play a bit. And like Kadarius Toney specifically is terrible at those timing route things. He's just really bad at it.
Well, and I think we probably should have expected more growing pains too. Like, I think we convinced ourselves off-season training camp, like, it's enough time to get these guys involved and make it work. And not having Kelce certainly hurt, and they couldn't really adjust their game plan on such a short turnaround. But the Sky thing specifically is so frustrating because he still played like 90% of the snaps. Like, he was on the field a ton. And, when you see when you see Andy Reid's offense and people are making these cut-ups on Twitter, and it's like wide receivers just running into each other, and all their paths are crossing in a way that you can tell it's absolutely not supposed to work that way, because that's not how clean Andy Reid's formations normally look. Like, obviously there's something that's not working, but I think that it's going to be a while before we see it look clean. Like, I think we're going to see some more sloppy play this week. The idea is that Travis Kelce will make it all look better and Patrick Mahomes will play better, and hopefully it'll all work out in the long run.
I'm just saying, you and I both, we've all watched Demarcus Robinson go rogue on whatever the hell he wants to do out there, and he's making them damn things work. I'm sorry, like Kadarius Toney. I hear you.
But DeMarcus was doing it, Ron, when they had Kelce as a backup plan. And he was doing it mostly when they also had Tyreek Hill as a backup plan. When you have neither of those two guys out there, and your backup plan is Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's not a volume receiver, suddenly things get even worse.
Well, I hope the return of Kelce returns his accuracy to guys that are potentially going rogue. I'm just saying, I do. I know DeMarcus wasn't always running right routes. I know he wouldn't. I just like Kadarius, like the one, like in particular, Kadarius Toney, where he is running through the big drop at the end, not the one that he dropped for a touchdown. There was Kadarius ran the right route. Right now, Kadarius should catch that ball.
Yeah,
but he also shouldn't have to be spinning around to come catch it. He was inaccurate. Justin Watson runs good routes. He missed him. I mean, he missed him in the middle of the field. Chris Collinsworth thought he got hit. He thought his arm got hit, thought the ball got tipped because he didn't get it out there. Like you said, Sky Moore. Now, I think there was some pressure from Aiden Hutchinson. Sky Moore, I remember on a third down was wide open in the middle of the field, and Pat was off high to him, and he couldn't convert that pass. I expect in those moments that the greatest of all time, potentially, and the greatest in our game today can make those plays, and he didn't.
I'm with you. I also think that it's going to be very interesting to see what this looks like whenever they go out there with Travis Kelce. And I think it's going to just change a lot of what we're talking about here. I think that Mahomes will look better. I think the receivers will look better. I think it's just like it's a pacifier for Mahomes where, hey, everything's gone to hell. I need to make a play. I've got great chemistry with Kelce. We know where each other are going to be. We're on the same page. And I don't think he's there yet with any of these wide receivers. I would also add this, Ron. I cover the Cardinals out here in St. Louis right now. And one of their issues, I'm not going to stick on this long. One of their issues this season that they ran into, and one of the reasons why they're such a terrible baseball team in 2023, they had way too many outfielders. They had like 7 dudes they were trying out there. And the problem is like none of them really took advantage of the playing time. And so they just kept kind of filtering through all of these different options, and they never really landed on anything that was consistent for them. That's my fear with the wide receiver situation for the Chiefs. They always say like, hey, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you really got none. My fear with the Chiefs wide receiver situation right now, and I've been really high on Sky Moore, is that they've got 7 dudes and they really have like none. Because when you look at the way that they're utilizing them right now, they seem to trust Sky Moore, but the quarterback doesn't seem to trust Sky Moore. They know they've got Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's going to go out there and fill a very specific role, but it's not a very valuable role. And so I think that sooner rather than later, Tony and Moore specifically are going to have to make their snaps count, or they're going to have to move on to the next guys. Because they got to find out who can actually capitalize on the opportunities that are given. Because by the time you get to October and certainly into November, you kind of got to start rolling a little bit. And Rashee Rice is taking advantage of his opportunities, dude. When he's on the field, he's making it count. And these other dudes are not right now.
Yeah, I mean, let's dig into them. And the two guys that are in particular, the guys that aren't rookies, the guys that I think the expectation was from this team as receivers. And we have to also understand, like, the Chiefs, they don't need a traditional number one receiver. They really need a number two, because their number one wasn't out there as 87. They need a tradition, like a number two, but we've talked about a number one wide receiver. The two guys there, Kadarius Toney, who I think many people look at his talent and his ability, that you could see him being that person to play off of him. And then Sky Moore. It is hard-pressed not to think, hey, man, just put him in the same position that Juju was in, and with his speed and his ability, that he can do that or more. But if we take a look at those two really jumped out from week one. Obviously, Kadarius Toney. I'm going to say this right now. I am not that concerned with Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney, at least from the other guys, created some semblance of separation, right? He just had maybe the worst night of his athletic night, like his athletic life. He just maybe had the worst night. I mean, I'd be surprised if he could do that again. Just drop balls just like that. The two in particular, I'll give him a pass on the third down and 2, and Ricky James is crossing his face as the ball's arriving. Like, I'll give him a pass on that. But those other two, like, I don't expect Kadarius Toney to do that, right? I don't. If he's healthy, I think he is a piece. I think we could really come out from this game and think, oh, that's what the Chiefs were thinking. Because if you think about it, just the two that he drops, like, the one he dropped for the interception for a touchdown, he catches that. I think he gets that first down, and I think there's a chance he could go if he just gets past one guy with his speed and ability. And then obviously the one that he dropped that was thrown a bit behind him that could have put them completely in field goal range, there's a lot he could do with that there. So I'm not as concerned about Kadarius Toney, because I think if Kadarius Toney has an issue with drops, you talked about you're in St. Louis. We're talking Rick Ain't Kill territory, where Rick Ain't Kill as a pitcher just couldn't throw the ball anywhere near the vicinity of a glove. He was just throwing the ball over people's heads, right? Like this is a Rube Baker major league type of situation. Yeah. You can't throw the ball back to the pitcher. Like this is that situation. So I'm not as concerned. Sky Moore is the one that has me more concerned.
So I'm not worried about Kadarius Toney having the drop issues that he had in week one. That being said, if you look at some of the numbers, like Kadarius Toney has one of the highest drop rates in the NFL, actually the highest drop rate in the NFL since he has entered the league. Like, drops are a legitimate issue for him, just not at the level that they were
like
in week
that,
one.
though, yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to happen again. I would also add this. I am concerned about Kadarius Toney as like your top wide receiver. I'm with you, Ron. He doesn't have to be a number one, but he's got to be your number two pass catcher. And at some point, he has to do wide receiver-y stuff. Like, he's got to do the things that you would expect Juju Smith-Schuster to do, or even Marquez Valdez. Like, somebody do stuff that a wide receiver would typically be asked to do. And thus far, it looks a lot like what McCole Hardman was in Kansas City. You get the flashes, you get the exciting plays, man. The dude is unbelievably gifted with the ball in his hands. It's just figuring out a way to get the ball into his hands. And so far, he's more of one of those like slash players, like DeAnthony Thomas, one of those types of guys, than he is a legit, true professional NFL wide receiver. And until that changes, he's going to be a gadget guy. So that's where my concern is with him. It's not with the drops the way that it was in week 1, though. I am totally with you, though. The bigger concern was with Sky Moore, because that dude was on the field for almost every single snap in week 1. And when you go into this week, I don't think there's a single player on the Chiefs with more pressure on them than Sky Moore to perform. Because sooner rather than later, this dude's going to have his job taken from him by Rashee Rice. Because when you look at the way that Rashee Rice played in week 1, and you look at the way that Sky Moore played in week 1, it was a no contest. Sky Moore could not demand targets. He could not seem to catch the ball when it came his way. I know they were difficult targets, but at some point you got to make a play to be able to earn more opportunities. That dude, I was the most excited person in Kansas City when they drafted him. And it has been an abject failure so far in 17 games of him being in Kansas City. And I hope that it gets on track. And I'm still not completely off board, but man, it's getting hard to be a believer at this point.
Serda, and you two have been the top believers, and I have never had any issue with Sky Moore. I just like, hey, let's slow down, let's calm down here. But Serda, I know you're concerned with it. This is legit what I want to get from you, whether it's a comp or expectation. Because Sky Moore he's played over 20 games when you count the playoffs. I mean, he's under 300 yards in his career in total yards. What was your expectation? What was the comp that you guys had in your mind because you guys were all Sky Moore, all Sky. I mean, this is the first time I've heard you all down, and you seem perplexed with him, Serda, and you were all about him up until last week.
I don't know. Maybe BK has one. I don't really have a comp for.
I've got one for you real quick. My comp was Randall Cobb. Like, that was kind of what I was hoping he could be for the Chiefs. A guy that plays underneath, he gets a lot of catches, a lot of targets, and he's somebody that you can just rely upon every single season. That was the kind of role, the kind of player that I thought he could potentially be with the Chiefs, similar to what Cobb has been for Aaron Rodgers in his career.
He ain't been close to that.
No. Oh, and yeah, and it's really disappointing. And of course, there's doubt creeping into my mind. There should be doubt creeping into everybody's mind about Sky Moore, because there's just no production. It's not even that the production hasn't quite been there. Like, there's just simply no production at all for a second-year player who they took in the second round. And last season, I was willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. Like, he came from a small school, really took him some time to get up to NFL speed and figure out this complicated Andy Reid offense. And then this offseason, all we heard was how he knows the playbook like the back of his hand. He's working out with Mahomes all this time, and he's just not putting it together, it doesn't seem like. And he only got targeted twice, and that's frustrating because I'd like to see him get a little bit more opportunities. But the doubt is real, and it deserves to be there. Like, I never thought that Sky Moore was going to go out here and all of a sudden turn into, this 1,100 yard or 1,200 yard a year wide receiver or something like that on a consistent basis. But I thought he could be a guy that you can rely on, like BK was saying, like, in the underneath stuff, the guy that Mahomes has to look to. Hey, we need something. And Sky Moore breaks tackles too. Like, we know that he can do that. Like, when he needs a quick 6 or 7, like, Sky Moore will be there because he can create separation in short areas. It just hasn't translated at all yet. And I'm not going to read into week 1 that much. Like, so much changes over the entirety of an NFL season. But yes, I think the panic is real. Like, he's got to start showing anything, literally anything. I
was going to say, is there like, because you guys have been on the train. Like, it feels like it's been for you all more or less. He hadn't gotten the opportunities to go. I'm just like,
he hasn't. He didn't get opportunities last year. Like, he didn't get opportunity, but he played 90% of the snaps in week 1 and did absolutely nothing with it.
I was gonna say, what do you like? Because you brought this up, you legit think there is some sort of chemistry issue between him and Mahomes, because there are spots where he's open that Mahomes isn't getting him?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think, one, Sky isn't doing the right stuff, and therefore Mahomes isn't looking his way. Like, I think you have to earn trust from your quarterback. I think that's a real thing. Like, in fantasy football, Ron, I know Serda will understand this. You'll probably just laugh it off. In fantasy football, there's like target earners, right? There are certain guys that just for whatever reason, they go to an offense and they are going to get targets because it's a skill. You can earn targets from your quarterback. Sky Moore is the opposite of that. It's like Mahomes looks his way, sees that he's open, and then tries to find somebody else. I think there were legitimately plays on Thursday night, and I'm curious to see if this happens against the Jaguars because he's going to get open again. There were plays where he would see Sky Moore open, and then he would hold on to the ball too long because he looked elsewhere and there was nobody else open, and he sure as hell was not going back to Sky Moore. And I don't know why that is, but clearly there is something there. I don't know if it's Sky's not running the right routes on other plays, and therefore he's just not expecting him to run the right route on other. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but something's up here. It is clearly not going the way that any of us anticipated. And so if that continues in week 2, it's only one game. This is the other thing. It is one game. It is a small sample size thus far. The Jaguars do not have a great secondary. Last week, Indianapolis was able to throw for a decent amount of yardage. Michael Pittman had a huge game against them. Maybe he rights the ship, and this week he ends up having a great game, and we're talking totally differently next week on this podcast. But he needs to, because if it doesn't happen against the Jaguars this week, by week 3 or 4, we might be talking about him getting replaced in the starting lineup.
Real quick, also, when the Chiefs had the ball, a big part that could have helped them was not having to have Patrick Mahomes' 45 yards rushing lead the way by a huge margin, followed up by Pacheco's 23 yards. That they got to run the ball better than this, and we've talked about this for years. We've talked about it last year. They do it and listen, nobody's saying they got to be the Ravens, but they got to run the ball better than this, and that is something that needs to improve as well.
Yeah, we don't have to spend much time on this, but when they signed Jawan Taylor and they brought in Donovan Smith as well, we knew, okay, those guys are definitely pass blocking first, run blocking second, and there's no question about it. What does that mean for the running game? Because Orlando Brown was the opposite. And we all just kind of hoped, okay, well, you've got Isaiah Pacheco, you've got a good interior of the offensive line. I'm sure it'll be fine at least. Week 1 was not fine. They looked abysmal in the running game. And as a result, we saw Andy kind of go back to some of his old tricks of getting too cute in short yardage situations. One of the reasons that I truly believe that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year is because they found a way on 3rd, 2nd, and short to just say, you know what, we're turning around, giving the ball to Isaiah Pacheco. That dude is going to make a play for us, and we're going to convert here in short yardage situations. Last week, they couldn't do that. They've got to be able to do that against this Jaguars defense. Or if not this week, they've got to start finding ways where they can as they continue along this season.
All right. When the Jags have the ball, this is going to be a real test, right? We talked about with Detroit, they had a top 5 offense last year, but you could look at that team and be like, hey, there's some Matt Laporta, the tight end who you liked, he had a pretty good game. That wasn't, he was pretty good. Their rookies looked pretty good, but from a receiving core, like you could mess with some coverages and maybe leave some guys on islands. Their skills are not nearly as strong as this skills group together, and their skills gave the Chiefs at times some issues, particularly Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield. But when you look at what these jokers going to pull out, and then when you think about the person who's the quarterback pulling the trigger, and then you think about Doug Peterson, the person who is calling the plays, and you see Calvin Ridley came up out his suspension like nothing happened. Like he just walked right out there like he just been playing, came right on out. I mean, my man had like 50 yards in the first quarter and a touch. Him out there, a clear number 1 receiver. Christian Kirk, who the Chiefs struggled with at times last year, both in the regular season and in the playoffs. I know because he was on my fantasy team. He didn't do nothing last week, 1 catch for 9 yards, but he is there in the middle of the field. Evan Ingram, who is a pretty good tight end that got himself a new contract because of what he did last year. Travis Etienne, you saw what they did with Jahmyr Gibbs. Travis Etienne is somebody they might try to match up against linebackers, right? Then Zay Jones. They also have him as well, too. Like that is a crew against this secondary that's going to be much more challenging than the Lions were secondary, and then Etienne running the ball as well. And the Bigsby kid is not too bad as a backup. Like this is a real potential issue for the Chiefs with these skill position guys.
Serda, how many teams do you think have a deeper group of skill guys than the Jaguars? Like, not, I don't know that their top end guys are anywhere near like what you would see with the Dolphins or anything that, but if we're talking about depth and the number of players that they have, is this like top 3, top 4 in the NFL right now?
And
49ers,
Dolphins, 49ers, Eagles,
probably Jaguars. Maybe the Bengals, you could argue.
Bengals, yeah.
Yeah, but they're not. Their running
Bengals
game,
can't
but
run the ball at
their
all,
running
though.
game is not as good as their tight ends. All right,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think the Seahawks have some really nice players.
And the reason why I bring that up is because, like, some of these teams that we're talking about, you're going to see them in the playoffs. So this is a really nice test for the Chiefs to find out, including the Jags. Like, we're probably going to see them in the playoffs. This is a nice test to see how this secondary is going to be able to hold up. One of my biggest takeaways from week 1 was, dude, Trent McDuffie looks legit. And we saw him towards this stretch run of last season. He looked like he was the real deal. If he keeps that up this week and he's able to do that against Calvin Ridley or Zay Jones, some of these guys that are going to be lining up on the outside against him, I think it's time to start putting him into not the elite category of cornerbacks in the NFL, but like that second tier of cornerback. I think you could start talking about Trent McDuffie being in that group.
they're going to need him. What do you do with him? Like, how do you match it with this group? Like, you look
leave
at
him on
him,
one side probably.
Well, so the reason that Christian Kirk didn't do much last week is because he was coming off the field outside when they were going to 2 wide receiver sets, and it was Zay Jones and Calvin Ridley. So Calvin Ridley is clearly this offense's alpha. He is an outside wide receiver. He's a mismatch all over the field. Like, I think you try to match him up with Calvin Ridley wherever you can, and then they're going to put Christian Kirk predominantly in the slot because that's where he played for most of his career prior to last season, and that's probably where he's more comfortable. He just has to come off the field more often.
Yeah, and L'Jarius Sneed, that means he's going to be important as well if he can get close to the level that he plays and plays better than he did last week. So their skills are going to be an issue. I will say this, though. We talked about week 1 and everything about Chris Jones not being there. And I've heard it kicked around. I think we talked about it on this show about, hey man, this Chiefs defense could be a top 10 defense. And could this be the first time Patrick Mahomes has a defense of this caliber? And I didn't know how much I believed that, but watching game 1, one of the top things that came to my mind, Serda, was I'm watching this and I'm like, yo, this defense, the person that it's built around, the person that the way they want to conduct business ain't there. He's not there. He's not in the middle or off the edge or what completely, as you called it earlier, game record that you had to account for and change how you block up front and change what plays you probably run. He wasn't there. And that group looked like, yo, as I said, do you got guys that can win on one-on-one matchups? We kind of saw that up front. You kind of saw what would this look like. And Charles Abenahu's not even there. But you guys saw, what would this look like if 9-5 was in there taking away, the other resources of guys? What would it look like? Him not having a blitz, Justin Reed all the time. Like, it made me see the vision of, yo, this could be the best defense without a shadow of a doubt that Patrick Mahomes has had with the centerpiece there. So I am excited to see now how Spags is able to do things when he has Chris Jones in the middle or wherever hell he wants to line him up.
Yeah, I think having Chris Jones back is going to make all the difference in the world. And I think they showed in week 1, like, yeah, I think that this defense without Chris Jones, and a lot of it was being made nationally because the Chiefs are one of the face of the NFL franchises now. And a lot of it was like, this defense kind of sucks without Chris Jones. And I think those guys hear that, and they're not as locked into the younger guys and the way that they have kind of built this defense out because, and they shouldn't be. There's a lot of young guys on this defense that nationally you just simply aren't going to know. But I think there's a lot of young guys who showed what they can be and showed that they can be contributors in week 1. And I think everybody should feel really optimistic about that. Now, I still right now am like, They got a lot of guys who look solid. I don't know if they've got anybody who's a star. And I'm still waiting for one of those guys to hopefully develop into that and kind of announce himself that way. But I think they got a lot of guys who are good at what they do, maybe above average, but not necessarily great.
And that's where I think it gets really interesting is like, I think McDuffie can be a star. I think Nick Bolton has a chance to be a star.
I think Nick Bolton is a star. I think Nick Bolton is a star. I'm sorry. I've been over this.
I think Nick Bolton is good and deserves more credit than he gets.
Shove it up your ass. I think he is a star in terms of a middle linebacker. I think
the dude just makes plays, man. I know he allows too many catches, but God, he is so good. Even in that game last week, I just watched and I was like, dude, this guy he's constantly around the football. And that's a skill. It's like we were talking about adding targets towards you, having your quarterback target you a ton. I think what Nick Bolton does is a skill where he finds himself around the football a ton. And I think we spend too much time, not the three of us, but Chiefs fans in general, talking about what Nick Bolton cannot do, what he's incapable of doing. And instead, I think what we should do is talk about what he does add in terms of the value to this team. He's really good as a blitzer. The guy has a ton of TFLs over the last couple of seasons. And when he's able to get into space, like he finds space to go forward, the guy's amazing. His problem, of course, is when he has to go backwards in pass coverage, but that's most linebackers in the NFL, frankly. Most linebackers are not good. Not everybody's going to be Fred Warner.
No, I don't think I think he is, to me, I think he's a top 5 middle linebacker in football. And
there's a lot of bad middle linebacker play in football right now, though.
Yeah, well, okay, shove it. I think he's a top 5, top 3 middle linebacker in football. He makes plays like, oh yeah, that ball just accidentally rolled to him in the Super Bowl that he ran back and didn't get caught. Or like a lot of people forget, like what an amazing play and a great tackle and the speed he used to get to whoever that Eagles player was that he gets on a 3rd down and just races over and drills him in the second half to stop a drive. Like, dude is great. Now, listen, if you're asking him to be in coverage for long stretches or something, if you're saying, hey, man, go out there, man, go pick up Travis Etienne one-on-one. Well, yeah, okay, you got a problem. All right, that's a bit of an issue, right? Like, I like Justin Reed too. But if you ask Justin Reed to go cover Calvin Ridley one-on-one the whole way, you have an issue.
Justin Reed's just bad in coverage. We can just admit that now.
And so, listen, I think I was intrigued to see what will this look like when the guy the defense is designed to be built around is actually there.
How many snaps do you think he gets this week? Like, do you think he's a 50% snap guy? Do you think he ends up playing more than what anybody's expecting? Chris Jones?
I think about I'd say 60% of the snaps.
I tend to think somewhere in that ballpark. And then like if he looks really good and he's like dominating, maybe he gets up to like 70 or something like that.
I'll go like 50. I'll take the under, but I think it's somewhere in that range.
All right, sir, I'm gonna need you to hit me with my music here. The show, the game that is sweeping the nation, certified or imposter. So I want you all to listen to this one tight. Here's my certified or imposter. Do the Jags have the mental edge in this game because of the revenge factor? The Chiefs beat the Jags twice last year. The Chiefs are the team the Jags are trying to get to. The Chiefs are the gold standard, not in just the AFC, but in the league. They're trying to get to that. The Chiefs ended their season. I bet you the Jags probably say to themselves, damn, we turned the ball over multiple times in the second half. We added to that. We could have really put pressure on the Chiefs if we don't turn the ball over deep in the red zone, right? Like, I wonder, certified or imposter, do you think the Jags have the mental edge because of the revenge factor? And you know when the schedule came out, that's the game that they were quote-unquote circling.
I'm sure that they circled it and said, like, that's a team we got to go beat to announce ourselves to the NFL that we're this ascending playoff, potential Super Bowl contending caliber team. But I don't think that's actually an edge for them because I still think that they still have ways to go. Like, they are an ascending team. I think they are a really, really good team in the AFC. I think Trevor Lawrence is a bona fide superstar quarterback. But everybody's talking about Jacksonville losing the Chiefs twice last season and it being this revenge game. I think it's a revenge game for Patrick Mahomes, because that playoff game, Patrick Mahomes was about to go absolutely nuclear against them until he got hurt and had to leave. And I think Patrick Mahomes remembers that. So I'm going to say it's an imposter, because I think this is more of a revenge game for Patrick Mahomes than people realize.
I think it's certified for two reasons. One, because they lost to him in the playoffs, and we've seen this with teams against the Chiefs in the past, right? Like, you think about Buffalo, for example. Buffalo has a regular season success record against the Chiefs, and I think that could be true of the Jaguars
they want them
as well.
games more. They
want so badly. It's what the Chiefs used to be for the Patriots, right? The Chiefs used to want those games so badly, and the Patriots were like, cool, we'll see you in the playoffs. Like, we'll show you our best stuff whenever we get to January, and I think that's where the Chiefs are now. The other thing is, the Jaguars view this, like, forget even just about what happened last year in the playoffs. They view this as their opportunity for a coming out party nationally of, we have arrived. And we're not just a fun, sparky, kind of like what Detroit did last week. We're not just this spunky young team. We're a team that is a team to be really reckoned with in the AFC. Because you look around this conference, man, like, the Jets are no longer somebody that is going to be discussed this season. The Dolphins very much are. The Bills looked terrible last weekend. There is an opening beyond the Chiefs of, okay, who's going to be the other team here in this conference? The Bengals looked terrible last weekend, too.
The Ravens didn't look hot either.
The Jaguars might be one of those teams that's looking around saying, hey, why can't it be us? And this is their opportunity to prove why it can be them. So, yeah, I'm saying this is certified.
I would have said certified. I would have said certified, but now I'm saying imposter. Because if the Chiefs win the game against the Lions, I would feel different. But not only did the Chiefs lose the game against the Lions, it's the way they lost the game. And now they've just had to hear, Chiefs ain't got no receivers. Chiefs are they going to Chiefs are struggling. Look how bad they look. Patrick Mahomes. This feels like I'm pissed off. This feels like I want this game. This feels like we gotta get back on it. We lost this game. We don't want to go 0-2, and we need to send a damn message to everybody. Like, hold on, man, we still the champs. Like, we're still. I think the fact that they lost to the Lions and the way they lost to the Lions, there is no way that the Chiefs in that locker room, fellas, are in there thinking, "Hey, man, the Lions were just better than us." They got to believe that they lost that game themselves. They shot themselves in the foot in that game. So I would have thought that the Jags had the advantage mentally because of that. Like you just talked about with the Bills. I would have thought that. Like I think the Chiefs have with the Bengals, because I think the Chiefs really, like those games, they really give a rip about. But I don't think so, because I think the Chiefs are serious this week too. I think they care about this game. One, they don't want to start 0-2. And two, I think the way they lost to the Lions probably has pissed them off.
I think it's a good point. Patrick Mahomes, after the loss to the Lions last week, that was like, I feel like as upset as he has ever sounded. And like, we're talking about a player that's lost a Super Bowl. like he was, and he said, I'm embarrassed. Like, I'm always embarrassed when we lose. And he sounded like he was genuinely like pissed at himself, pissed at the team, like can't believe they blew that game. And I think there is something to that.
Yeah, so we'll see. All right, let's get our predictions in. As just a reminder, BK is the only one who calls it certified. Let's get our predictions in. BK, how do you see this game going with the Jags?
I think it's going to be super close. I think this is going to be a very good game. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game than what people are currently anticipating. I'll say 27-24. Chiefs get the win, but it's close, and it's a nail-biter late.
All right, Serda, I'm going to go because I want you to be last. I think this is what did our late friend Therese would say, an over my dead body ball game. I think this is I'm pissed off. I think the Chiefs want to send a message. I don't think the Chiefs score as much as they used to when they would want to send these messages. The way this game feels to me was the game last year against the Bucks. I can't remember who they lost to ahead of the Bucks, but I remember us sitting here thinking, boy, they got to win this game. And they beat the hell out of the Bucks. That's how this game
lost? Was that after the Colts
it was off the Colts loss. Yeah. I think they don't score as much, but I think this defense is really good. I go 27-17 in this game. They got 10-point lead, 10-point win, 27-17. And I don't think in the game you actually feel the Chiefs are really threatened to lose this game.
I'm kind of similar to BK.
Okay,
I think the Chiefs are going to win. I think they are going to put up a few more points, though. And I think that Patrick Mahomes is just going to go out there. They don't have a particularly great secondary. They've got an improving pass rush that could give you some problems, but I got faith in the offensive line. And I just think ultimately this is going to be one of those games where Patrick Mahomes knows he wants to go out there and make a statement against another good team in the AFC. So I think the Chiefs are going to win 31-24.
Well, you got them points, man. I'm sorry. Them points scared me. They scared me after what I watched offensively last week. Hopefully they're in a bit more sync, but I think this is a big one for the Chiefs. All right. Hopefully we're not talking about a damn 0-2 Chiefs team because, by the way, real quick, if they lose, they're 0-2.
Winning the Super Bowl.
You're worried yet?
No. They're still going to win the Super Bowl.
No, they got time, especially with the way the Jets just fell apart in week 1 without Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's not a team you got to worry about. They'll beat the Bears next week. It'll be fine.
I got to see how they would lose. I don't think they're going to lose. I had to see if it's like, you remember the Titans a few years ago? They lost to the Titans. I had to see
Derrick Henry ran for like 200 yards in that game.
I know it. I'm just saying, like, I got to see how
the next 4 games are Chicago, the Jets, the Vikings, who are abysmal, and Denver. They're fine. They'll be 4-2 after 6 weeks.
Hopefully they win this one here. All right, we are out.